It's finally October, and you know what that means. It's time to take a look at a bunch of horror games. Starting up, we're taking a look at an old point-and-click game called Harvester, a game that was really controversial for the time. Do the controversies hold up? Is it really that gory of a game? And more importantly, is it even worth playing?
Harvester is a graphically violent experience in terror, combining role-playing action and combat with an intense cinematic storyline. It is a strange and twisted world where things aren't what they seem. Secrets are kept behind closed doors, and if you're smart, you'll leave them there.
Harvester is a point-and-click adventure horror game that came out in 1996. It was developed by DigiFX Interactive. To put some things into perspective, this was the same year that Quake came out. Point-and-click horror games are still pretty big around this time. Games like Night Trap, Phantasmagoria, Sanitarium, and Harvester were all released within a few years from each other. At the time, gory and violent games were still very controversial as well. Mortal Kombat came out in 1992. At the time, these kind of games were pushing live-action graphics as well. Night Trap, Phantasmagoria, 7th Guest, 11th Hour, and of course, Harvester all featured live-action cutscenes and graphics with real people green-screened into the games. For their time, this was a cool aesthetic, though it looks a little hokey and dated by today's standards. Harvester was revealed at the Consumer Electronics Show in 1994 and was immediately the subject of controversy due to the violence and gore presented in the game. Gilbert P. Austin, the writer of the game, was strongly against censoring the game and said he wanted Harvester to be a commentary on whether violent video games are a product of a violent society or whether violent games created a violent society. This commentary on the effects that violent media has on society is very prevalent in the game, as well as were other socio-political ideas such as religion, homosexuality, corruption in law enforcement, 50s consumerism, and the threat of communism. Despite the creator's desires to release the game uncensored, the game was unfortunately censored in Europe and outright banned in Germany. But here in the good old USA, we got the game in its complete uncensored gory glory. I played the game on Steam and it was completely uncensored on Steam. The game is also on GOG uncensored. Unfortunately, the only way to play this game on Steam or GOG is with DOSBox, so the resolution is really shitty. Harvester finds the player, Steve, waking up in a strange town of Harvest. He has lost his memory and doesn't remember who he is or what he is doing in Harvest. It's kind of a cool setup as you go into the game not knowing what is going on, or who Steve is, or who the other characters are as well. It's almost like you have amnesia with Steve. Right off the bat, you and Steve can tell that things aren't quite right in Harvest. Everyone acts really strange, nobody believes that you have amnesia, and always refers to you as a kidder, and for some reason society looks like the 1950s.
Stop teasing me, young man.
Listen, this may sound strange, but I've lost my memory. Do you believe me?
Well, you always were a kidder, Steve.
The music is also very weird. It's a mix of like 50s commercial jingle music with eerie tones over it. It fits the feel of the game perfectly and adds to the overall weird tone of the game. Your first interaction with another character is with Hank. He claims to be your brother. He tells you he is sick and staying home from school and is home watching TV. He isn't really sick, but rather is addicted to violent television. He watches hyper-violent cowboy TV shows in which they actually shoot and kill Native Americans on live TV.
Yeah, but look at the tube. Where's the remote control?
What's that?
Now that I think about it, I can't remember.
This is just the first glimpse into the messed up hyper-violent society that you and Steve are stepping into. For the sake of whatever plot synopsis I bring up, I will be interchanging Steve and you since, well, you play as Steve. I hope this doesn't get too confusing. There are 4 overarching plots hanging over the story as you go throughout the game. 1, there's a bake sale coming up, and the town is obsessively making cookies to get ready for it. The proceeds are going towards paying for funerals of homeless people which have frequently arrived in Harvest and died there. 2, a blood drive is coming up at the end of the week. Everyone is required to donate blood unless they are members of the lodge. It is inferred that people who donate blood will either die or be severely wounded. 3, you are going to marry a girl named Stephanie. She is your neighbor and is also confused as to what is going on in Harvest and who she really is. She is the only other normal person in the game. She is trapped in her room by her parents until the wedding. You can interact with Stephanie in her room, tell her what's going on, and eventually get the option to romance her if you desire. And lastly, the Lodge. The Lodge is a satanic cult-like institution that dictates and manipulates everything that occurs in Harvest. Lodge members are given special treatment in the society. The secrets to everything transpiring are said to be found at the Lodge, giving Steve the ultimate goal to join the Lodge to figure out what the hell is going on. And this is the main quest of the game: join the Lodge. Every character in this game is completely messed up, suffering from strange personality disorders, obsessions with violence, and absurd fetishes and sexual perversions. Everyone comes off as scummy. It's a mixture of disturbing and hilariously in an over-the-top what-the-fuck black humor kind of way. These side characters also give side quests. These quests range from things like giving Jimmy, the paperboy, papers in the morning, all the way to finding out who burned down the newspaper factory. Like I said, everything is weird. Here are some of the weird things that stood out to me. You give the paperboy papers, not the other way around, and if you forget, he gets mad and will physically assault you. There is a woman known as the Wasp Woman. She is actually part wasp. The Guardian at the Lodge speaks through telepathy. Stephanie's father is obsessed with meat. Your father works at the butcher shop, so a lot of the dialogue between Stephanie's father involves you convincing your dad to give him meat. There's a soldier at the military base who is missing his legs. He is incredibly mentally unstable, but he is controlling a stockpile of nukes. He has some of the most hilarious dialogue options and one of the best kill scenes in the game.
Did you find evidence of commie infiltration? That's what I thought. The kookaburras told me, but I wouldn't listen. They lie so much. But now my crust is golden brown. Can't you hear the timer ding?
Your father is locked in his bedroom through the entirety of the game. Breaking into the room, you find him in a full body cast, and the room is full of blood and sex toys. He explains that sex is a violent and painful experience, and that he is afraid of your mother because she will beat him again. The cowboy in the live TV show that your brother is watching only speaks when reading off of cue cards. Even real-time questions are provided to him on cue cards.
Oh, shit! Ow! Shit on a stickaroo!
Overall, I really liked how absurd these characters and situations were. The game is definitely surreal and disturbing, but like I said, it's also hilarious in a black humor sort of way, and I really enjoyed that. It made the characters and the world really interesting, and I look forward to interacting with all of the things in the game. Puzzles and challenges are completed in a typical point-and-click fashion, by talking to NPCs throughout the game and by finding items in various places and bringing them to where they need to go. When talking to NPCs, you are given various dialogue options and even the ability to type your own responses, though the responses they will react to are limited. Certain dialogue options influence future dialogue options and how to solve puzzles. For instance, the postmaster tells you not to tell anyone in town that the sheriff is blackmailing him, but if you blab about it, you have to go around a different way to get information out of the two of them. There's also an overworld map which allows you to travel between areas. These areas include your house, the Potsdam's house, the Wasp Lady's house, the Johnson house, the general store, the post office, the barber shop, the mortuary, the cemetery, the hotel, a police station, a firehouse, the newspaper factory, a TV station, a diner, a lodge, a missile silo, a butcher shop, and your high school. Failing certain challenges can get you arrested, and if you are arrested too many times, you are executed.
Somebody help me! What do you people want from me?
Too late for that, boy. Ain't it, Sergeant?
Indeed it is, Sheriff. Answers may only be found in the lodge, and you must be alive to seek them.
There are a lot of things in this game that would not fly today. For the time, the game was controversial for the gore and violence. If the game came out today, I feel like it would come under fire for different reasons. For example, there's a firehouse that you can go to for puzzles and items. All of the men at the firehouse are flamboyantly gay, like stereotypically over-the-top gay, and the townspeople are always making flamer comments and jokes about them. I could see people making a stink about homophobia regarding that if it came out today. In general, the characters in the game are very antagonistic towards commies. I don't blame them, but some people today might get touchy about that. I find it hilarious though. Also, the game was fairly unique for its time in that you can literally kill almost every character in the game. This means that there's actually a very simple combat system in the game. It's a little awkward and unintuitive since it's done by right-clicking on the same adventure point-and-click space, and the timing of attacks is really weird. There are also weapons that you can acquire to make killing people easier. If a quest is too hard, just kill the person and take the item instead of solving their puzzles. This includes kids. You can brutally murder children in gory fashion, something modern games don't like to touch on at all. Like in Fallout, you can't kill kids no matter how hard you try. NPCs can fight back though, even children, sometimes resulting in hilarious scenes like this. One of the most fucked up scenes involving children occurs to your baby sister. She spends the game in her crib and your mom is in the kitchen. At the beginning of the game, you can see a wasp stuck to her head and she eats a spider. This is when your mom introduces you to the wasp woman and how she lets her wasps get all over the place. Later in the game, you can see wasps coming out of the baby's eyes, which your mom simply pops back in. It's really fucked up, especially since it happens to a baby.
Oh, it's not as bad as it looks. You just pop them back in. See? As good as new.
There's also a scene where Edna, the owner of the diner, hangs herself and her younger daughter, Karen. There's a scene that goes into a graphic monologue telling the ordeal, and you can see her and Karen hanging for a brief second. This is after Karen is kidnapped, raped, and buried alive. It's really fucked up. The puzzles vary in difficulty to solve. This is a old point and click, so expect a lot of the "where the hell do I go? What the hell am I supposed to be doing?" moments. But it is definitely manageable. And as a whole, I found the puzzles and interactions in Harvest entertaining. Eventually, you will get accepted into the lodge, and the last challenges of the game take place there. The lodge is different from the rest of Harvest. You actually have to fight monsters. The puzzles and challenges are more lethal and time-based. It's actually kind of funny seeing certain townsfolk appear in the lodge as members. The game for the most part ran decently for a DOSBox emulation. There are a few stutters, but nothing really game-breaking. That said, one big problem that I ran into was towards the end of the game. I saved as I entered a room, and you could not backtrack through it. I didn't have the necessary items to complete the puzzle and could not backtrack to get the items. This was about 9 hours in, so I was pretty pissed that I would have had to restart the game. Luckily, cheat codes exist, and I was able to get the items that I needed using a cheat and was able to finish the level without having to restart my game. Another issue I had was the difficulty of certain rooms in the lodge. As a whole, the lodge's puzzles were too confusing compared to the rest of the game. You were expected to know a lot without having anything explained to you, especially that you should stop trying to solve puzzles and just straight up murder people to get what you wanted, like the coat checker. Additionally, enemies with guns are straight up impossible to kill without a gun yourself, and if you saved in advance when you were out of ammo, you are straight up fucked. I mean, look at this shit. I used an invincibility cheat to show you how impossible it is to get up to this asshole to kill him with a melee weapon. You'd never be able to finish this without ammo. There's also some weird inconsistencies at the game as well. At the beginning of the game, Hank says he's never heard of a color TV, but later on he implies that the neighbor has a color TV that he likes to go and watch. I'm going to be talking about some ending spoilers right now, so if you would like to avoid having the ending spoiled for you, skip to the time on the screen provided. There are two separate endings to Harvester. Prior to joining the lodge, Stephanie is kidnapped. It's set up to look like a murder, but eventually you reach her. It is here that the Guardian explains what is going on. You are actually in a virtual reality simulation used to turn people into serial killers. You are faced with the option of killing Stephanie, thereby going back to the real world and living out life as a serial killer, or staying, marrying Stephanie, and staying in the virtual reality of Harvest until you grow old and die together. Personally, I thought that ending was lame. The VR setup seemed like a cop-out to me. It cheapened the events transpiring before you. That said, I think the ending where you become a serial killer is actually the better ending. There's a line in there about violent media and how it affects people, and I think that sums up the overall message of the game. The thing I hate the most about the ending was all your choices throughout the games don't impact the game at all. Your dialogue options, the methods of solving puzzles, and if you decide to kill people or not don't influence the ending you get whatsoever. You literally can pick, right there in the end, which ending you want to see. Overall, Harvester is a dated but enjoyable game. The graphics and gameplay don't really hold up by today's standard, but the zany world and cast of characters more than make up for it. While I wasn't a huge fan of the ending, I definitely enjoyed playing through the game. The best I can summarize it is that you are playing through a cheesy B movie, and I love cheesy B movies.